Fionn McCool by Neil Higgins. A letter to Nancy Flanagan, Pasadena, California, USA, from Finn McCool, Ballindoon, County Sligo, Ireland, Monday, October 29th, 1962.
Mom, I finally made it. Between the 2 trains and 2 flights into Ireland, I was delayed at least 72 hours. Not to mention that ancient, clattering bucket of bolts that was the train from Dublin to Ballindoon. I knew that discount travel agent was too good to be true. Not that I'm complaining, of course. I know you saved just as much as I did to send me on this trip, and I appreciate it. Ireland looks just like we thought it would. The hills just roll on and on without end, like looking out onto an ocean made of grass. It looks just like the Quiet Man. Of course, there are roads and cars, but it still feels, I don't know, ancient. Somehow untamed. I feel like I'm breathing in history. I really wish you'd come. I understand you don't feel comfortable meeting Dad's family, but even just to see it, to connect with your roots. In any case, when I got into Ballindoon, I didn't quite know where to go from there. I tried calling ahead, but the payphone at the train station has apparently been out of order for some time. Or hasn't been connected yet. There was some confusion over the matter. I finally met a man who drove me all the way to the house for a couple of shillings. I have no idea what that converts to in dollars. The house is something else. It's like something out of Bram Stoker. Gargoyles and pointed arches, and there's even a tower. It's massive, too. I'm sure the bedrooms are larger than our apartment. I was led in by a young woman, Mary Margaret, whom I think is my cousin. She didn't seem to know I was coming.
I didn't know you were coming,
she said with some surprise.
Very sorry, but your timing is awful, actually. It's getting ready for the party we are.
Apparently they have some big blowout every year on Halloween. I bet this house is full of all kinds of ghosts and haunts, I said.
It's not the ghost you have to worry about on Samhain. It's the Aishi, the folk from the other world.
Which other world? I asked.
The other world, with the capital O.
I couldn't tell if she actually believed it or not.
I'd hate to send you off after you've come all this way,
she said with a sympathetic frown.
Who did you say you were again?
I told her, but she seemed entirely unaware of my existence until this very moment. She invited me in to meet with the rest of the family and sort it all out. Then I met Uncle Fergus and, well, I don't know quite what to call her. Grandma is too familiar, yet Dad's mom is a mouthful. I suppose for now I should call her Mrs. McCool. She's quite something. Very dignified. She didn't seem to remember writing back and forth, and it wasn't until I showed her the letters that she seemed to know who I was. She must be getting on in years. Maybe that's it. But Uncle Fergus assured me I was welcome and that they'd have a room made up for me. I'm just settling in for the night and wanted to let you know that I'd made it and that it was everything we thought it would be. And more so. I'll try to write you more, but at this point I'll probably get home before the letters do. I've already taken lots of pictures, so we'll have plenty to show you when I get back. Miss you very much. Love, Finn.
Entry in Finn McCool's private journal, October 29th, 1962.
Made it to the ancestral home, though it certainly doesn't feel like it. Wrote a letter to Mom saying it was everything I had hoped. Didn't have the heart to tell her otherwise. Mary Margaret and Fergus seemed happy enough to have me here, even if they weren't expecting me. Mrs. McCool is another matter altogether. When I said that I was her grandson, she said in a voice like frost moving across the ground,
I have no grandson. Don't think because I'm old that you can fool me. I see you for what you are, some enterprising young man sniffing around my granddaughters looking to spill your seed and sire your way into an easy life.
But not at all, I assured her. I'm Finn McCool, Connor's son. Well, that was apparently the wrong thing to say. She became incensed. She was like a storm breaking right in front of me.
The nerve of you coming into this house after everything that wretched abomination did. And the nerve of him sending his spindly whelp because he didn't have the courage to face me himself. Until your father comes here and faces the consequences of his actions, you're not welcomed in this house.
I was crushed. Mom said that Dad had told her there had been a rift between him and the rest of the family, but I had no idea it was that bad, or still going on after all this time. I'd heard all those stories of people tracking down an Irish family and just showing up and saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so's kid," and being welcomed with open arms. The whole trip over, I imagined what it would be like when I walked in and said, "I'm Finn McCool, Connor's son." And everyone would cheer and invite me in and ask me about California and tell me family legends. Looking at it written down, it all sounds silly. But there it is. I was hoping to find some sort of connection to Dad's family. My family.
Fran, that's no way to treat a guest.
Mary Margaret said. Mrs. McCool looked ready to hit her, but said nothing.
He has to be Connor's son,
Fergus said, smiling at me.
Looks just like Connor did at that age. Is your dad with you, my boy? Is he waiting for the white flag before coming up himself?
That set Mrs. McCool off again. She ranted and railed about how she would kill him if he ever darkened her door. They must not have heard. I tried explaining, but getting a word in with Mrs. McCool was like trying to talk down an earthquake. Finally, I was able to explain that we hadn't seen Dad in 20 years, that he'd vanished one day. Fergus looked crestfallen. Mrs. McCool looked smug. Fergus and Mary Margaret finally convinced Mrs. McCool to let me stay. She agreed by way of a curt nod before leaving the room. Fergus is Dad's older brother and insists I call him Uncle, so I suppose I will. They put me in the salmon room, which is a bit of an understatement. The color, the decor, it's all salmon. Even the ashtray. Think I might be put off fish for a while. Here I ponder, weak and weary. Better finish unpacking and get to sleep.
Addition to previous entry.
Went to put my wallet and Dad's pocket watch in the nightstand drawer and found, well, it's 3 very large hazelnuts, and I couldn't tell you what they were doing there, or why they were covered in blood and viscera. Looks like they'd been removed from something's stomach, forcibly. Is this some folk remedy for warding off evil? I couldn't decide what to do for a moment. I didn't want to offend anyone, but the thought of trying to sleep with those things the smell alone made me gag. That distinct smell of blood in the deepest, most primal level of our beings means danger and death. It was so strong that I had a metallic taste in my mouth. I ended up throwing the hazelnuts out the window. Even after cleaning up my hand and the inside of the door, I can still smell the blood. I'll sleep with the window cracked.
Excerpt from Primitive and Pagan Traditions and Customs of the Celtic People by Dr. Lawrence Fielding, Professor of Sociology, University of Pennsylvania, first edition, 1932.
Samhain, Sunday on October 31st, was the end of the harvest season and ushered in the waning or darker half of the year. This was the time when the days shortened and the year died, only to be reborn again on Beltane, May 1st. Because of this, Samhain was very heavily connected to death and the dead. During the feasting celebrations, places were laid at the table for ancestors to attend. The primitive peoples of the Emerald Isle believed that Samhain was the night when the veil between the worlds was thinnest, and that malignant spirits could pass through from the outer world to wreak havoc on the lives of mortals. The ancient people of this wild land believed they needed to defend themselves from these spirits with masks to confuse spirits and cleansing fire to drive them away. To the wild, primitive people of ancient Ireland, this was a night to appease the spirits to ensure survival through the dark, harsh winter.
Entry in Finn McCool's diary, Tuesday, October 30th, 1962.
I can see why Mary Margaret said my timing was difficult. The house has been in a non-stop flurry of movement all day. Portraits of deceased family members have been hung around the first floor and festooned with black fabric. Between that and the near constant rain, I feel like I'm in some Victorian novel. The bonfire has been prepared in the giant fireplace in the sitting room and will be lit at sundown tomorrow. Black candles are on almost every available surface. More family has arrived. Uncle Fergus introduces me to them by way of telling me they're relation to members of the family I haven't met yet. I've been trying to keep a family tree in my head, but it's near impossible. I tried to ask a bit about Dad and why he'd left home, but I've come across two problems. One, the only people who seem to know what happened are Fergus and Mrs. McCool. The former doesn't want to talk about it, and the latter doesn't want to talk to me at all. And two, now that more guests are here, it's all but impossible to get Uncle Fergus alone to ask him. I guess the direct route isn't going to work. Another cousin of sorts has arrived, Mary Kathleen. I think she and Mary Margaret are cousins on their mother's side. They look remarkably similar.
And who the holy fuck is he?
Mary Kathleen asked while she looked at me over unfavorably.
My brother's son. It's all the way from California he came.
So don't be horrid.
Mary Margaret added. Everyone else has greeted me politely enough, but there have been eyebrows raised so high they might still be stuck to the ceiling. Mrs. McCool continues to dislike me. Under Mary Margaret's advice, I stay silent whenever she's in the room. That, thankfully, seems to make her forget that I exist. This morning, I tried to approach her to apologize for any distress I caused her and find out what I could do to ensure her of my honest intentions. Of course, I was hoping to find out more about Dad, but I didn't mention that. She pinned me with her eyes, blue like shards of ice, and said,
If there's one thing I hate more than a liar, it's a sycophant. I know you're up to no good. The tainted offspring of tainted offspring. If you speak to me again with your wicked, honeyed tongue, I'll pull it out of your head and use it for kindling for the Samhain fire.
I was stunned into silence. She looked ready to grab the nearest thing at hand, a marble ashtray, and throw it at me. I decided that was a good time to leave. I mentioned the incident to Mary Kathleen and voiced my concerns that Mrs. McCool might hate me.
Of course she hates you, you Egypt.
She cackled.
The woman hates everyone. She barely tolerates us, and we're family. You're especially unlucky because she absolutely despises anyone who isn't Irish.
I am Irish, I insisted.
You're American.
She replied, as if explaining something to a child. Well, yes, I'm also Irish. I have Irish ancestry.
All you Yanks think you're Irish now that Kennedy's president.
She left the room laughing. Was this a mistake?
Excerpt from a letter from Mrs. Shannon O'Brien, Drumfin, County Sligo, to Mrs. Doreen Doherty, Beaufield, County Mayo, Thursday, 1st November, 1962.
And goodness, this storm! I've never seen anything like it in all my days. It's thankful to God I am that my Martin got the McKinley boy to repair the roof this summer. The wind was howling through the house, something fierce, and it was pissing like rain. My Martin was a true gentleman and kept me warm by the fire, if you get my drift, like. Even at our age, we deserve a bit of tenderness, or not so tenderness, as the case may warrant. In any case, our Nora, the one whose garden you so admire whenever you visit, went to that great Shawin-do in the Ballindoon, and she, as she always does, her sister married a mate of Fergus's from school, so they get invited each year. I feel cold dread grip my heart whenever I see that big, giant house up on that hill. I can't imagine what it must be like during a storm like this. The lightning and the howling winds. I shudder to think about it. Mr. Doyle down at the market said the rains got so bad that the only road up the hill flooded and they were all but trapped up there. He says they're sending some people up to see if the flooding's gone down or if they still need help. I can't tell if it's the house or the family that's cursed, but evil lives up on the hill with that family.
Entry from Finn McCool's diary, Wednesday, October 31st, 1962.
Another dinner survived. This one was especially fraught. Another cousin of sorts, whose cousin I couldn't say, has arrived. Mary Bridget, who looks uncannily like the other Marys, seemed to need the explanation of my presence repeated over and over.
I just find it hard to believe we have a long-lost cousin in California.
She insisted.
It's like something out of a film.
He then turned to me with a furrowed brow.
Is it really always sunny in California? Do you eat hamburgers for every meal in America? Is it true you all wear white shoes on the 4th of July? Also, who's Connor? Why haven't I heard of an Uncle Connor?
Mary Kathleen thought it was hilarious. Mary Margaret tried to smooth things over, but met with limited success. Uncle Fergus keeps insisting. By the time the main course arrived, Mary Kathleen was straining herself trying to suppress laughter. The Marys, Margaret and Bridget, were silent. The former from embarrassment, the latter was shamed into it, and Uncle Fergus was red in the face from frustration. The non-family guests are meant to be arriving within the hour, so I'm upstairs changing. Apparently, we're meant to be in black, in masks. Lucky I brought my good black suit. I thought to wear Dad's pocket watch, but it stopped. It winds fine, but it's just stopped. Did I damage it during the trip? I really hope not. Best to leave it in my room, I suppose. Can't help but feel I'd enjoy myself more if I just stayed in my room. But I want to find out what happened with Dad. I think Uncle Fergus is my best bet, but he seems used to sweeping things under the rug. I might need...
Addition to previous entry.
Uncle Fergus just brought a mask for me to borrow. A harlequin. Fitting, I suppose. I tried to ask him about Dad. Started by commenting on the house, asking about family history and all that. Apparently I come from money. Lots of it. Or at least Dad did. House has been in the family for generations, as well as a crest and everything you'd expect of European relations. Calling them relations seems disingenuous, an oversimplification. In any case, I asked Uncle Fergus what it was like growing up in a house like this, and he was very diplomatic in his responses. But it seemed he had genuinely loved Dad, disappeared, and their sister Deirdre, deceased. Apparently at one point I had an Aunt Deirdre. I said that Dad had never mentioned he had a sister, to which Uncle Fergus replied,
No, I don't suppose he would.
And that was that. He clammed up and said he'd see me downstairs. But if he's anything like Mom and me, I just need to catch him a few whiskeys in, and I should be able to get it out of him. It's really upsetting me that there's this schism between my family and me, and I don't know the cause. I'm actually surprised how much it's upsetting me. Growing up, I always felt like if I ever got the chance to meet Dad's family, that I would, I don't know, feel some kind of belonging, like I fit in. That there was a direct line between me and the beginning of human history through this family, and this would be my only chance at it since all of Mom's family is dead. It's here. I feel it right in front of me. But my dad did something that created this abyss of history that I can't traverse because I don't know its size or shape. So many of my friends can trace their families back through the ages with stories and the occasional heirloom. Paul Lefferty's grandpa even took them back to his hometown in County Carlow. Paul came back with all kinds of stories about his family going back to the Middle Ages. Surely my family has such stories. Will I ever be a part of them? In any case, Fergus intimated that my absence from the party wouldn't put me in anyone's good graces, least of all Mrs. McCool's. Imagine I'll go down, have a drink or two, make sure that people notice that I'm there, and excuse myself as soon as it seems polite to do so. And apparently Mrs. McCool makes a speech every year at midnight, so I'll probably stay through that and then come up and start making arrangements to leave. I'll bring my diary down and with me to get some writing done, if nothing else. Between the family being obviously uncomfortable with my being here and Mrs. McCool's inimical stares, I can't imagine there will be anything that will keep me downstairs past an hour or so.
Entry in Finn McCool's diary.
Like a shadow, she moves across the room, her inscrutable face a midnight moon. In shadow she sits like darkest dream, and through the gloom her red lips gleam. Her smile a prayer, a want, a plea, her hair like waves of black winter sea, her heavy-lidded eyes as black as jet, her perfume wafts of guilt and sore regret. In my veins she moves quicksilver. I freeze, I shudder, I quake, I quiver. Her name my soul is carved upon, my dream, my fear. Oh, my Lennon.
Addition to previous.
Divine. Unearthly, supernatural. I saw her in the parlor observing the room from her shadowed corner. Her mask was a panther, black and silver. Her eyes met mine, and it felt like cold water had been poured down my back. It was invigorating. It was enervating. She gestured me over. I obeyed.
Are you lost, little one?
She asked. I couldn't respond.
And to whom do you belong?
I really don't know, I replied.
You are lost,
she said with a smile like ice down my spine, like a chilled cloth on my fevered brow. I explained my situation briefly and with as few details as possible.
I know your father.
Know him well? I asked, perhaps too eagerly.
By name and deed.
I tried to ask if she might know what had happened, but she seemed more interested in me.
So, lost little one, you've come to find your home again.
I don't know if I'd consider this home, I said.
Well, of course it is. Where else would it be? Your people are here. This is where you belong. Not unwanted, unloved, flung across the sea.
She put her hand to my cheek. I could feel her cool skin through her glove like beckoning marble.
This house is your bones. Its stories your blood. What would you be otherwise?
Addition to previous entry.
I think I may be drinking a bit too quickly. Have I been drinking? I suddenly found myself taking a slice of cake from the buffet table in the dining room. Did I say goodbye? I remember now. A dark room. The library? There were only a few candles burning. The room was deep in shadow, but I could see her lips. Blood red. Glistening wet. We kiss? We must have, because soon I was moving down her body, kissing her through her dress until suddenly there was cool skin below my lips. She wasn't wearing underwear. She tasted earthy, spiced, like the deepest blood-red wine. At some point, I feel I heard her say,
Think you can do better?
I could. I redoubled my efforts. Reflecting back on it, I may have sensed someone else in the room. She spoke over my head rather than to me. I thought to look, but my attention was otherwise diverted. I was insatiable. I could have stayed there all night. After some time, an hour. 10 minutes? She shuddered and laughed wildly. She sounded like a nymph on the hunt. She pulled my face close to hers and wiped my lips with her thumb.
Ask about Deirdre,
she said simply. And then? I don't know. I was getting cake nearly on the other side of the house. I haven't seen a clock lately, so I have no idea what time it is.
Addition to previous entry.
Mary Kathleen in a dough mask asked me if I'd seen Mary Margaret in a swan mask. I might finally be able to tell them apart now. I hadn't seen her, but I promised I would look.
Handwritten note found at the writing desk of Morna McCool, titled Midnight Toast, dated 30th October. A previous draft was found in a nearby bin, dated 10th October.
As the days grow less, may to your hardship. As the nights grow greater, may to your diligence. As tonight becomes Samhain, may your honored dead, peering through the veil, see how you venerate them, that they may guard you from evil. As harsh days of winter approach with their cold and paucity, may you know the comfort of kin at your hearth. May strangers never darken your doors, for they bring with them ill will and ill tidings. May you pass the long, cruel nights telling stories of your family and its history, for a family is its history. There are those who say family is blood. Blood is fleeting. We spill it so freely, so easily. We bleed at the least provocation because blood is just under the surface waiting to be spilt. Blood is nothing more than a means to stay alive. A family is not blood. A family is its history, its story, its name. May you hold close to your name, because those without a name are lost.
Entry in Finn McCool's diary. This and all subsequent entries of Finn McCool's diary are undated, suggesting that they were all written on the same night, Wednesday, October 31st, 1962.
Found Uncle Fergus in the game room after Mrs. McCool's midnight toast. Couldn't help but feel it was a bit pointed towards me, but Mary Kathleen assures me that Mrs. McCool writes it each year weeks ahead of time. Apparently, Mary Margaret wasn't seen at the toast, which is unusual. Mary Kathleen wants me to keep an eye out for her, and Mary Bridget in floral mask. She hasn't been seen in a while either. Anyway, found Uncle Fergus in the game room. Appears that now that the midnight toast is over, all sense of formality is over and done with. It seems like everyone has been drinking has caught up with them all at once. I feel the same, actually. It feels like I've been passing through hot and cold spots around the house. Words are somewhat illusory. No, elusive. I find my train of thought wandering a bit. Maybe I should switch to water. Seen enough of it coming down from the sky since being here. Could I stick my head out the window and have my fill? Or will I get washed away? All memory of me removed from this place. Focus! Getting answers! I found Uncle Fergus in the game room. He looks a bit rosy under his wolf mask. I'm sure I do too. He greeted me with a very loud,
"My boy!"
and a firm clap on the back. Y'all but forced a double whiskey on me and said he wouldn't hear a word from me before we shared a drink.
"To family, old and new."
He toasted. It was only after I finished the whiskey, very good whiskey, that he would let me say anything. After skirting the issue a bit, I finally asked, "What happened to Deirdre?"
Oh, sweet Deirdre.
He said with sudden gravity. His eyes were shining, as was what I could see of his forehead.
Like a pixie she was, bright, mischievous, and wild. I loved her dearly, but she and Connor were inseparable. Always up to antics and mischief. I'm the eldest son, so of course mother and father didn't tolerate that sort of behavior in me, but Connor and Deirdre took pity on their dour older brother and all his responsibilities. I've been entrusted with a pocket watch passed down through our family. Connor and Deirdre would take turns stealing it so that I'd have an excuse to go onto the grounds or the village to go running after them. The day it happened, she'd taken grandfather's pocket watch. Father sent me after her to fetch it back. She and your father were down the hill, a ways near the woods, and she...
At this point, he fell silent. He opened and closed his mouth several times, not making a sound. What happened? I finally asked.
He says it was an accident. But how could it have been when her face was so... It's nothing we should be getting into, my boy. Best left for the past.
You'd mentioned something about a pocket watch, I asked, my throat suddenly dry. My mind went immediately to Dad's pocket watch in my nightstand drawer. He shrugged.
Never found. It was forgotten in the frenzy of Deirdre's funeral and Mother casting Connor out of the house. To this day, both of their names are forbidden in the house. A portrait of Deirdre is up in the hall for Samhain, but we can't say her name. It was a year before I thought to look for the watch again.
Something passed over his face in that moment, and his eyes widened as they met mine.
You don't have it, do you? Did your dad give it to you? Does he have it? He took it. He must have. Just like he took her.
Uncle Fergus was changed. He was suddenly wild, frantic, like a wolf cornered in its den. He came at me, grabbed me by the shoulders, and shook me. His eyes were wide, and spittle flew from his mouth. I looked around me for help, but the room was suddenly empty when it had been filled with people moments before. I don't know about a pocket watch, I managed to say. Uncle Fergus was bright red and looked ready to strangle me, but in the blink of an eye, he was deflated. Wayne. Impotent.
It's sorry I am, my boy,
he said, his voice thin.
Best have another tipple to steady my nerves.
I excused myself as quickly as I could.
Addition to previous entry.
Took a moment in the bathroom to steady myself. The house is packed to the gills, full of laughter and singing, but above everything, I can hear the storm outside. The rain is drumming on the roof, 4 floors up, but it sounds like it's right above me. The wind is howling constantly, yet almost sounds like whispering. Must be the house settling.
Entry in Finn McCool's diary.
The sun has stepped upon the ground. Adonis's face with fire crowned, his eyes as green as vernal fen, his freckled like a dappled glen. His smile beams with blinding glare, his lush, flush lips a sweet, sharp snare. He invites, excites, incites, consumes, his earth and musk the room perfumes. I sweat, I sigh, I blister, burn, my soul does stir, my blood does churn. He is the fire. I fall and flail in my curse, my cure, my blight, my Aelin.
Addition to previous entry.
He is the sun. He stands there blinding and perfect, as if we mere mortals could possibly survive his presence. He makes fire crawl on my skin, burn in my veins, consume my tongue. His mask was in the shape of a fox, black and gold. His green eyes blazed through the darkness of his mask like 2 eerie will-o'-the-wisps in a moonless night. And I want him to lure me into his den. Our eyes locked, and he smiled a wry, crooked smile that brought a flush to my face. He gestured over me with a tilt of the head, and I was pulled in by the gravity of this magnificence.
Things are finally getting a bit fun, eh?
He said to me. We were standing at a reasonable distance, but I could feel his words like a hot breeze in my ears. My night has been a bit up and down, I replied.
How so?
Though he didn't move, his voice felt like he was leaning in, hungry for my answer. I wouldn't want to put a damper on the mood, I replied, indicating the crowd around us. People were laughing and shouting and braying. I felt his fingers on my jaw, gentle and soft. I suddenly found myself telling him about my situation. It must have been disjointed and rambling because I don't remember exactly what I said.
You're Connor's son. I heard you were here, but I was half convinced you weren't real. The last son of the last son, lost to the land of promise, out in the far west beyond the sea. I've heard that absolutely everyone in California is beautiful. Is that true?
Of course not, I replied. And I wouldn't call myself lost so much as strategically removed.
It's better off if you are, if you ask me.
He took a sip of his whiskey, and a few drops remained on his lips. I was absorbed by them for a few moments before I was able to process what he'd said. Better off how? I have a whole history that I will never be told, never be a part of. I feel like a felled tree. The roots remain, but I am removed and made into pulp.
Family, blood ties, obligations, it's all shackling. Let it all go. Men like you and me, we don't need things like family holding us down.
Men like you and me.
Young, attractive, men with nothing but future ahead of us.
He replied with a knowing smile.
You're a big, strapping lad. Surely you can take on the world all your own.
But I was hoping to learn about my history, I said sullenly.
You're American. You have no history. You're free like. Free to do whatever you want. Free to seize life by the bollocks, as it were.
But with Dad and my mom's family, it was always just, we were Irish. I held up a hand to belay his objection. Yes, I know we're American, but we're also Irish. It's just part of how we see ourselves in the world. We're over here and across land and sea and is Ireland, where we came from. My name is Finn McCool, for heaven's sake. You can't get much more Irish than that.
Silly boy. Building up myths and stories in your head. And it all looks so lovely because of time and distance and because you live where the sun sets. That isn't even your name,
said with a wry smile. Of course it is, I replied.
It isn't. Finn McCool? You aren't some pulp fiction hero. You're called that because of your lazy American tongues. The son of Connor is Fionn McCool, named so by his father after his father to spite his mother. But I suppose you aren't him. I suppose you're Finn McCool.
I didn't know.
Addition to previous entry.
I'm not sure where I am. I'm not sure who I am. No! Stop being dramatic, Finn. I'm in an upstairs bathroom, and I don't entirely remember coming in. There's blood on my lips. God, yes. Fire on my lips and my hands. Scored down my back and blooming on my neck. Acrid, bitter fire in my mouth, down my throat, consuming me from the inside. Every gulp made me thirsty for more. An unquenching need. He smelled like a warm breeze, and I wanted to mark myself with his scent. It was feverish, wild. At one point, he pulled me back by the hair and hissed.
She'll be the first thing you forget.
I think that's when he ran his fingernails down my back. He shoved my head back down and tossed his over one shoulder and laughed, victoriously. Was there someone there in the shadows? Only a small amount of bleeding through my shirt. I think by now everyone would be too drunk to notice. No sign of Aylin. I think I came in here to clean up. In here with me are a mostly empty tumbler of whiskey. Mine. The lady's left shoe. Looks familiar. One of the Marys? And That's pocket watch. Why is it in my pocket? I'm going to have some water and put it away again.
Addition to previous entry.
My room has been ransacked. Everything's been turned over and turned out. The pillows have been slashed. Uncle Fergus, looking for the pocket watch. Obviously, I have to hide it. Come looking for me, thinking that I have it on my person.
Addition to previous entry.
I've hidden the pocket watch in the linen closet. And my memory is a little fuzzy. The 3 glasses of water in the bathroom have done nothing to clear my head. My watch is it my watch? Well, I should give it to Fergus, surely. So why is it so important to keep it hidden? To take it back to California with me, where it will be safe. Safe from whom? From what? Something is not right. I should find Mary Margaret. Is she still missing? I should find Mary Bridget. Or is she one of the ones missing too? Why does my back hurt? Looks like something clawed at me, but who? Why do I remember bright green eyes and deep red lips? That doesn't seem right somehow. My heart is pounding, and these blurry memories are sending blood below the belt. I'm suddenly so antsy, and I smell blood. But how? Whose? The house seems quiet. People leave? No, they can't have. The storm is monstrous. It's still howling, raging, deafening.
Entry in Finn McCool's diary.
I found Mary Margaret. Or something that looks like her. I was walking down the hall trying to find Fergus, Mrs. McCool, anyone to remind me of, what? I don't know. But I was walking down the hall and I heard a muffled cry from one of the bedrooms. I looked inside and I cannot fathom. I must be hallucinating. Mary Margaret, or what was once Mary Margaret, was suspended in the air by one of her arms. Wings. Her arms had been transformed into giant, moon-white swan wings, and one was suspending her in the air. They both looked as if someone had tried to sever them, but stopped halfway through. Bright red blood glistened in the white feathers. She was motionless and rotating slowly in the air, like a beautiful, grotesque ballerina. I called her name, but she didn't respond. The room had become enormous somehow. I couldn't reach to pull her down. Suddenly, my lips were cold, and the scores on my back were on fire. I fled. I pulled the door closed behind me and fled. This is a dream. A nightmare. I need to find Mrs. McCool.
The following passage is pieced together from several instances of text throughout the house. Namely, written in the margins of a page torn from a book, crumpled up and shoved into a water decanter, written on the walls of the salmon room in an unidentified liquid, carved into the underside of the dining room table, and painted onto the wall of the second floor stairwell, painted backward. The handwriting of each instance matches, but is unidentified. Blood is fleeting. A family is not blood. A family is its name. McCool. Blood is fleeting. Blood is not a family. Blood is not a name. Blood is... I am not a family. I am not a name. Note found on a scrap of paper shoved between 2 books in the library. Passage illegible.
Hello, my gave in haven, Hawthorne, home, like home, mostly a home, home.
The following is likely an entry in Finn McCool's diary. The handwriting matches, mostly, but all pages following the latest entry have been torn from the diary. All following pages credited to Finn's diary are done so with the caveat that they were found scattered around the house and that their provenance is not certain, but an educated assertion.
Where is everyone? This house was full to bursting with people, and now there's no one. They couldn't have left. The storm is raging outside. Someone said the road flooded and we're trapped on this hill. So where is everyone? The entryway, the parlor, the library, the dining room, the kitchen, the study, they're all empty. And yet I hear people everywhere. I am not alone in this house. I am not alone. I can't be. Shadows move out of the corners of my eyes. Everyone is here. But why can't I see them? Have they left? Or have I? Can you hear me? I'm here. I'm on this side. Where are all of you? Only voices.
Entry from Finn McCool's diary.
Started checking the bedrooms upstairs. Mary Kathleen's room. The birch room is a copse of birches. The forest stretches in all directions. The bed is overgrown with grass. Mary Kathleen was on her side in the middle of the room. She's been transformed, transmorgified. Her face is that of a doe. The skin on her arms are dappled with white and brown. Fergus is there too. His wolf mask seems part of his face. He or someone has torn Mary Kathleen's stomach open. He is digging through her organs, muttering to himself about finding something. Mary Kathleen, on hearing me enter, slowly turned to look at me. Expression neutral, her doe eyes, now too big for her face, lock on mine and say, "What?" She's trying to say something to me. Surely she is. Or what is this all for? I tried prying Fergus off of her, but he won't be budged. He shoves me aside whenever I try. The whole time, Mary Kathleen, unblinking and unfazed, watches me. She watches me leave.
Entry from Finn McCool's diary. This passage is covered in rusty brown stains.
Hard shriek from behind door. Terrible shriek. Opened it. Mrs. McCool. Face of corpse. Red. Painful eyes. Hair like storm. Sees me.
McCool!
Screams over and over.
McCool! Bastard! Nameless! Nothing!
She stopped. I made her stop. Face like corpse. Still like corpse.
Entry in Finn McCool's diary. Damp from viscous clear liquid, likely tears and or saliva.
Nameless. Nothing. Alone. Empty. Hollow. Thought of a woman with a kind smile and comforting eyes. My eyes. I feel I remember her from another life. Before now. But what could there have been before now? There is no then. No yester. No before. I am without a before. I am.
Passage found carved in the walls numerous times throughout the house. The day has dawned.
The day has dawned.
The day
The day
dawned.
has
Day has
dawned.
The year goes on.
The
Year
year
goes
goes
on.
on.
The year
The year goes
The
on.
year goes on.
The day has dawned.
day
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 has
has
dawned.
dawned.
The day has dawned.
Day has dawned.
has dawned.
And we are gone.
And we
And
They
you
are
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 gone.
gone.
You
And
are
And
gone.
they
are
are
gone.
gone.
We are gone.
And we are gone.